Look who's decided to join us. Oh shit. Come on, say hello. Hello. Anyway, so obviously this is not what the video's about. I am kind of ill. I'm sick. I'm pretty sure it's COVID. Talking isn't difficult, but my throat is still affected. And in general, it's just a little bit. I don't know. It's not. It's not going to affect this too much, but just keep that in mind. I'm sick. Pray for me. I'm going to die. Anyway, on with the actual what we're here to talk about. So, what is now the second Below Decks article has just been published, and it also doubles as our first Below Decks article for Road Core, which makes perfect sense. I think we're at a stage where behind the scenes stuff for Deep Rock isn't going to kick in for a little bit. I think we might still get something before they start working on Season 5, but in general, I think Road Core is going to be a bit more of a focus for these things. A little bit. And in terms of the distribution of communication over sort of the rest of Ghost Ship's lifetime, given that they've been very open about their newfound or renewed, I should say, renewed dedication to open development for Road Core, obviously, but also for Deep Rock Galactic, I would say in terms of the distribution of instances of communication, whatever form they take, below decks articles, event announcements like Halloween, which honestly could still happen today, and obviously anything like teasers, anything like that, I would expect the distribution of communication, and I use distribution because I'm referring to across both games, to be 2 out of every 3 weeks there'll be something coming out of Ghost Ship from a communication standpoint. That's my expectation, and I think it's extremely reasonable. Especially with Rogue Core being developed at the moment, they should have plenty to talk about if they're going for a behind-the-scenes sort of view. Anyway, so this is about, and we knew this is what it was going to be about. It's about concepting weapons for Rogue Core specifically. So how am I going to handle this? Well, I'm not going to handle it like I handled the last one, just reading it out like verbatim. I don't think that's very conducive to a useful video. I think if you want that, you're best off reading it yourself. I've already read it, of course. I've read through it, so I sort of know what to pick out. It's not going to be far off reading it verbatim, but I'm more going to focus on the actual constructive sentences and quotes as well. I'm definitely going to read out all of the quotes, even though they're not all particularly serious. Also, along the way, where relevant, I will provide what insights I can into the relevance of this to weapons in Deep Rock, and the idea of new weapons in Deep Rock, and how that's not really going to happen. Either way, I think it's best that we get into this. Once again, thank you, Aaron, for being this new content writer and giving us these posts. For Deep Rock or Road Core, this is still a really cool thing that you're doing. I think transparency is what a lot of people are looking for from Ghost Ship right now. At least a lot of people who feel a little bit unsure or even burnt. Obviously, it's a really, really weird time for Deep Rock. I think there are good and bad people on every side of this, and the reason why that's the case is because people are taking sides. I personally am not taking a side in any way. I mean, I relatively side with Ghost Ship, but at the same time, I don't exactly side with their decision, which sort of puts me in a position where I'm not anti-Deep Rock, and I'm not a die-hard fan either anymore. I mean, I don't think I ever was a die-hard fan. I think I was just a passionate fan. Either way, this is a weird time, but I think people are getting used to it already, which is very good to see. The Reddit's been overflowing with sort of tier lists for some reason. But either way, I think it's important to do, especially because the Rogue Core Steam page has very little traction at the moment. And I think to possibly help with that, I'd be happy to help with that if I am going to help with it in any way. Like, if this will do anything, I hope so. Yeah, let's get into the post. Anyway, like I said, I'm going to be paraphrasing a little bit. So, for example, start right at the top. Hello, miners. Keep in mind that everything below is a work in progress, so we can't promise what you're reading here will make it into the final game. Of course, that is absolutely natural for concept art. Putting pistols on paper. So this is the kind of stuff that I wouldn't necessarily go through. I mean, names are important, like Frederick Jefferson being the 3D artist and concept artist at Ghost Ship Games. He's currently designing weapons for Rogue Core, as well as he's designed plenty of the plants that grow in the caves of Hoxie's, loads of heavy-duty mining equipment, and more weapon frameworks than he can count. No doubt. But right now he's drafting weapon concepts, a new set of guns for the Dwarven Reclaimers, the crack operatives of Deep Rock Galactic Rogue Core. Um, apparently he's actually okay. Currently, he's got a handful of drafts for a robust futuristic pistol called a Field Blaster. His second monitor's got a web browser with tons of tabs open, tactical flashlight, man on fire GIF, and does tiramisu with alcohol in it. Sort of escalating in the absurdity and irrelevance. I think tactical flashlight could actually be something. I would love a tactical flashlight sort of mechanic. I don't know. I think I remember one of them. It was when we did the Overclock workshops, the collaborative ones. One of my clean wave cooker overclock was actually like flashlight. It's really stupid. It literally just made it illuminate more, which is just dumb. There's also a weathered black replica Colt 1911 handgun resting on his desk. That's how you know we're not fucking around here. Picks it up, cocks a hammer, aims into the distance, taking note of the perspective and how it feels in his hand. Holding a real weapon sort of helps me envision new guns in my mind's eye and how the details might look when you're holding it in the game. That makes perfect sense to me. I hope they have like replica rifles as well. I wonder if they have a replica rocket launcher or something like that. But no, that makes perfect sense to me. I mean, you'll see that a lot of these concepts, I mean, pretty much all the concepts in this article are very pistol adjacent. I mean, we start with the Field Blaster. So we have sort of designs here A, B, C, D, and E. It's really like the concept of what they communicate is sort of what they go on to elaborate on. And I would actually agree with what's sort of been said below, that D and E are the ones that best communicate the concept. These two, certainly A and B, look like pretty generic sci-fi pistols. Still very well designed. I mean, I love seeing these illustrations, but yeah. How do you make a gun that speaks for itself? In game design, a gun is a medium of communication. It should tell you a bit about itself even before you pull the trigger. In that sense, a weapon's form follows its function. This prototype Field Blaster, for example, shoots a slow-moving energy wave similar to the Nemesis' projectile in Deep Rock Galactic. Frederick's job is to make sure this gun looks the part. So yeah, this makes almost perfect sense. I think right, yeah, I had a point to make about this, sort of the idea of a gun communicating to you what it does before you even fire it, and I would say that that's actually something that Deep Rock Galactic actually has nailed pretty much, and I suppose I should explain that because you can't exactly guess what any given weapon's going to do when you fire it, but the point is you're never surprised. I think, you know, the smart rifle, for example, you probably, especially if you didn't know the name, you probably wouldn't guess exactly what it's going to do when you hold the trigger, but it's also not particularly surprising. I think the design communicates, at the very least, a base sense of what the weapon's going to do. And they never surprise you. I think that's the idea. If we want to talk about what they're actually planning for this weapon, this Field Blaster firing an energy barrier projectile similar to Nemesis, I would say don't hold out on this for Deep Rock. I mean, I don't know why you would. It sounds very, very Breach Cutter adjacent, or even Flying Nightmare or Burning Nightmare now for the EPC. So, you know, in terms of those insights I was going to give about Deep Rock Galactic weapons, I was going to say something like, oh, this could be an overclock for the EPC, but kind of Burning Nightmare, you know. Unless you introduced, because what I like the idea of, obviously the Nemesis projectile, the barrier projectile pushes dwarves away. Unfortunately, because of the way Deep Rock is constructed from the ground up, enemy ragdolls while alive can't really be a thing, because I think it would be a performance headache, and it would also necessitate a huge amount of animations to be created to allow the Glyphids to reorient themselves, you know, get back up. But what you could do, if you really slow down the projectile, is use fear as a way to push enemies away. So, and I think I did propose something similar to this in an Overclock workshop. Something for the Breach Cutter where the projectile would move slower and fear enemies, and that's its way of pushing things away. That's a very interesting way that you could translate this into Deep Rock, because there's a truth we need to face, which is that Deep Rock is not going to get new weapons, to be honest. And the only way I could ever see that happening at this point is if they really did expand their team, which they don't want to do to a significant degree. That's the only way I can see that happening, because they need manpower for that kind of thing, but they also need creative input. And the truth is, they cover so much ground with Deep Rock's weapons. I think a lot of them do need some refining, and I'm very pleased that, you know, that's the kind of thing that maintenance updates will be able to do. So we're not going to go starving for months on end without like changes to the weapons. I think there's a lot of refining that can be done in actually most of the weapons, to be honest, but they still cover a lot of ground, and even further the overclocks do as well. And any idea for a new weapon could probably be fitted into an overclock in some capacity, like this one, and like a couple of the ones we're going to see in the rest of this article. Sorry, that was obviously quite the tangent. So I believe this is a quote from Frederick. Especially with our art style, the shapes are simple and the details are limited. So when I'm designing, I'm aiming for flash comprehension, emphasizing a specific feature that speaks to you what the gun does or how you use it. He says, for this one, I'm playing with how to visually communicate a force field emitter, as it doesn't make sense for this projectile to come from a regular gun barrel. I'm imagining the whole head of this gun punching in and out when you fire it like some kind of pneumatic hammer. So obviously that's what these two are. Specifically, this one we have sort of the struts in between the emitter and the gun itself that would sort of go back and forth to sort of produce this field. And yeah, sort of having it be like a dome almost on the end of the gun, much more so communicates the type of projectile it's going to fire than a normal gun barrel would. When Nelly, shut up. When designing a new gun, Frederick starts by receiving a pre-prototype from Mike Akopian. I apologise if I said your name wrong. I really don't want to, because obviously I just love these guys inherently. And it is Mike, lead game designer. These pre-prototype weapons don't look special as they use an existing Deep Rock Galactic gun as a placeholder, but how they function, what they shoot, and how they sound is already completely new by the time they land on Frederick's desk. He loads that pre-prototype into a testing engine and plays around with it to get a feel for how the weapon works and feels. How is it to shoot? What's the reload like? Is it energy-based or kinetic? How does it sound? Does it have a charge-up time? Once I play with the gun, I just try to let my mind go blank and start drawing. I really just feel it out. I know it sounds sort of corny, but it's really just about getting the vibe of the gun, he says. So, this speaks to an interesting facet of Ghost Ship and sort of how work is distributed, especially with Mike being the lead game designer and how he seems to be a sort of prototype designer of sorts. He, as far as I can, from my understanding, spearheaded the creation of the prototype for Rogue Corps, and even further than that, he creates these prototype weapons, like these pre-prototype weapons that the concept artist would use to create their concepts for the weapon before it's been made, but it's kind of already been made. But, you know, that's a really interesting sort of workflow, that you sort of start with a version of the weapon in-game, and then that it gets created from there. The very first step is actually an in-game one. I think that's actually really interesting. Or in-engine, I suppose. Instead of testing engine, it's not actually in-game, but, you know. We have this charge blaster here. We've got line A and B. That is a Hyperion barrel from Borderlands 2. Obviously, this is not the most like charge blaster, and it's like a pistol-shaped weapon. I mean, what is it going to be apart from the EPC? Or maybe finally they're going to add like some kind of actual laser beam, like ray gun, so it shoots like an instantly hit scan beam. But you know, when you think about it, especially with a charge up time, that's kind of just the coil gun. Creating a weapon fit for Reclaimer. Rogue Corps Reclaimers aren't miners, aren't they? They're the ones you send in when the miners can't get the job done. Their gear, their presence, and their weapons need to look the part. The Deep Rock Galactic miners are industrial guys who are really just going to work. Rogue Corps Reclaimers are the elite. They're badass, Solid Snake type of guys. We've got to reflect that in their equipment, Frederick says. He pulls up a mood board on his monitor with images he's using to inspire his designs. The mouse cursor passes over sharp-angled modern battle tanks, blocky bolt guns from Warhammer 40,000 universe. Great thing to take inspiration from, by the way. Picatinny rails, plenty of hard edges and rivets. He lingers for a moment on a picture of an F-117 Nighthawk stealth fighter jet. These sleek, high-tech, elite operations aesthetics define the Reclaimer's weaponry, but at the same time, each weapon needs to stand out on its own. To achieve this, Frederick picks one defining trait of a weapon and exaggerates it visually. An energy-based weapon, for example, should clearly show lots of exposed electrical components. Another Reclaimer weapon, the charge pistol, is a precision weapon, so Frederick emphasises the long barrel and chunky counterweight grips often seen on competitive target shooting pistols. That makes it sound like it's going to be some kind of like sort of precision energy-based sniper pistol of sorts, I guess. Could be almost M1000 adjacent. While Frederick is one of Ghost Ship Games' most prolific weapon designers, he never actually shot a real gun himself. I don't actually know a lot about guns, he loves. I mean, I'm not like a gun guy. I guess I look at them as tools for doing a certain job. When I'm designing them, I'm mostly focused on how I can make a gun that tells you something about how it works. Yeah, makes sense. Got some more Field Blaster ones. They don't really get anything new. I kind of actually really like this one. I think this makes more sense what they're going for, actually. These sort of things, I guess, would push into the dome part when you fire it. I don't know. From concept sketch to final firearm, because of Deep Rock's signature low-poly art style, Frederick's concept sketches often look more lifelike and detailed than their final in-game iterations. Now, I find this kind of interesting because I sort of view Deep Rock as low-poly but high detail is how I view it, and in the sense that I don't feel like much detail is truly lost. I guess on a really technical level, you look at the Glyphid Grunt, for example, that's obviously not as detailed as an actual real-life Glyphid Grunt would be. But it communicates more than enough to communicate the entire idea of the creature to you. I know it surprised me that they go for the same thing with weapons, because the weapons to me look so detailed. It's just like, what's really missing there? But they sort of go on to explain a little bit of that. As he's sometimes in charge of creating the weapons 3D models, he often draws with animation in mind, thinking about which components might recoil when firing, or how the reload process might work. Some details might get lost in translation to the Deep Rock art style, like small vents, bolts, or textured grips, but Frederick includes them anyway. You know, it's interesting. I don't feel like any detail has been lost in the weapons from going from concept to in game. I mean, I know that sounds stupid. Like, how would I know? But you know, I feel like we see things like bolts and vents and textured grips. I feel like we see these things in game. I don't exactly feel like they're lost, but I don't know, I'm not the one making them. It's important not to limit yourself here. At this drawing phase, everything should be possible, he says. I'd rather go 150% on the details here instead of 50%, and then having only half of those elements make it into the final design. You can always get more conservative as you model the gun in 3D, but you shouldn't start out like that. Right now, we're making a dream. And that is how concept art should be, in my opinion. Or at least the final concept art should be very detailed, and arguably more detailed than it's going to be in game. I don't think limiting yourself to the limitations of the engine is how you should design concepts. These drawings aren't exact blueprints for the final product. They're more of a way to communicate the feeling of a weapon, an expression of ambitions. And even if the in-game models lose some of the concept drawings' fine details, Frederick feels that good sound design and animation can still get those feelings across. I mean, it really is all about conveying feelings. I mean, they go on to say something similar about it here. I think that's what Deep Rock is really clever about. We have a low poly count economy. We have a poly count economy that we're strict about, but we still give enough detail that your mind fills in the blanks, he says. Like, if you look at the cave village up close, it's quite low poly, but because we add these details, like his little teeth and gross slurpy noises, it gives you the feeling this is some disgusting wet creature. We can do a lot of the same with these guns. I mean, it's absolutely true. At the same time, I'm still kind of getting really weirdly stumped by this idea of them not having much detail, because they absolutely do. I guess it's really just a texturing thing. I mean, you look at Harold, for example. Harold has literally every feature of his being present. I guess the only thing missing is the really realistic texturing. I can't imagine there's anything else going on with Harold other than what we see, because he's got so much going on. And by Harold, I mean the Lithophage Corruptor. But like I said, I'm not them. If that's how they see it, then I suppose that is just how it is. I mean, you know, the truth is, you look at these weapons, and they're not actually this detailed in Deep Rock. That's just the truth of it. Anyway, this is a shock blaster, which I want to talk about in a little bit, maybe once we're done. Frederick's philosophy of gun design. Not every gun comes easy. When Frederick gets stuck, he goes on lots of walks. I think it's important to take 100 breaks, 1,000 breaks. I try not to sit for too long. I go for a walk and get coffee. I think you have to have a certain level of brain activity when you're drawing. This weapon's active, so I need activity in the body. Frederick says as he starts laughing. I don't know, maybe to have undiagnosed ADHD. No, makes perfect sense. I think part of a healthy work environment, especially because, you know, it's interesting to think about, because you probably don't think about it much, but game design it is an office job, really. So getting out, having the ability to just get out, because they are not like a truly corporate office, where you probably can't leave the building during your work hours. I mean, that's good for them. When he steps out for a walk, he often comes back with a fresh idea for the guns. Certain weapon components draw their inspiration directly from what he sees on his stroll. The rotating disc component and one shock blaster concept, see drawing D for example, here, it was inspired by an ashtray he noticed just outside the front door to the Ghost Ship offices. In this way, each weapon concept is a personal expression. It takes shape from what he's feeling and what catches his eye at any given moment. One day, these sketches will become real Reclaimer weapons. Well, I mean, that's not true. With their own heft, kick, and percussive report. They'll shriek in the depths of Hoxie's as they blast aliens to steamy paste. For now, though, these firearms start as feelings. Art is about observation, about emotions and function, making it all click. That's the beauty of this process. I really love this stuff, Frederick says, smiling at the sketches on the screen. It gives you an emotion, right? Makes you feel something. That's my job. I suppose so, in terms of a visual designer for weapons, that is absolutely the idea. It's just to communicate the feeling that the weapon's supposed to communicate. This shock blast I find interesting for a lot of reasons. So obviously I've been through the entire post. It's essentially done now. But I do want to talk about this shock blaster thing for a moment. In the sense of new weapons in Deep Rock, like I said, probably not going to happen. Almost definitely not going to happen. But the idea of elements being lifted from one game to the other is something they've talked about. They actually said that it's more likely that things get lifted from Deep Rock to Rogue Core, which gives me confidence, by the way, in Deep Rock's future in terms of getting content, because yeah, it's kind of weird that season 6 is already like that's going to be in 2025. I think that's a really interesting sort of claim that they've already made, but I don't think seasons are going to be a year long, because I think the implication that Rogue Core could actually get more from Deep Rock than the other way around means that they're more so intending to keep up the Deep Rock live service as best they can, rather than turn Rogue Core into a live service. I don't think Rogue Core is actually meant to be a live service game. I think they're still going to go through a process of open development and major updates over a long period of time, but not through the live service lens. But also, in terms of what Deep Rock could possibly get from Rogue Core, I would say a replacement for the Stubby is in order. That's probably the thing that I want the most. Yeah, so the Stubby getting a sort of overhaul is something that could happen in Season 5, it could happen in maintenance updates, but I'd much rather see it replaced. You know, I first got this idea from playing DLG Survivor. The 4 bug taser, for example, is a pure electric weapon, but it's sort of done through like it's in pistol form, and to me that's exactly what the Stubby should be replaced with. The problem with the Stubby is it not really going on the way into being an electric weapon. You could also say the problem is that it doesn't go far enough into being kinetic or an electric weapon. You should be able to go like take it to certain extremes in both, and you can't really do it with either. Either way, let's have bring this article. Very interesting to get some insights on creating weapons for Rogue Core specifically. Yeah, I think that about covers it. I am slightly maybe not anymore, expecting the Halloween announcement today. Obviously, that's not hugely important. If anyone's sort of worried about that, it's like being made like there's these seasonal events, as they call them. I think they should be calling them holiday events personally, but these seasonal events, they've all been made. The only thing that they're going to need to make from now on is the cosmetic rewards for each one. Everything else, the decorations, the assignments have been sort of laid out. The double performance point event has been created for every single event. So there's no work to do. They said that the Halloween event, I should say, not update. The Halloween event is completed. So let's don't worry about that. I don't know why they'd be holding off on it though. Maybe they're just trying to ride the heat, good or bad, that Deep Rock has at the moment, for as long as they can. Maybe they only want to put Halloween out when they're close to having information on the next maintenance update. But either way, I'm grasping at straws here. This was supposed to be about the new Below Decks post, and it mostly was. So either way, thank you for tuning in. I hope you enjoyed this. Thank you for Aaron once again for creating these posts. You're the best. Yeah, that's it. If you enjoyed, please make sure to like, subscribe, and if you want to stay on top of everything to do with Deep Rock Galactic and Rogue Core, including news, behind the scenes posts, and patches, then you can click the bell as well. Alright, that's it. See you next time, baby.